Have you ever wondered what companies could do to manage their company better, or to have better quality of management, or to manage the company's financial assets better? There's many things that could be done, and I'm going to go over that in this video. How to have better quality of management. How to take a company and reorganize it so that it produces an incredible quality of service, of management, of whatever it is you're selling or you're making. I'm going to walk you through my story and the lessons that I learned, because as a PhD graduate, I have learned to analyze every little thing, back and forth, up and down. Today, there's a major problem with competition in the workforce. Competition is actually a bad thing, because the competitive ones, the more dominant one in the group, will get rid of their competition. But what if that person that they got rid of was actually more proficient at the job? Exactly. So as people move up the ladder, it's not because they're better at doing their job. They're better at getting rid of their competition. For example, I worked on the trading floor at an investment bank for the chief financial office. My coworker, who may have worked in the same group of data quality, he was very competitive and he was very jealous of my job. He was hired originally for my job, but he failed to do it. He failed to listen to the company's policies. Working in data quality on the trading floor, what was that? Well, I used to look at the trading books before the chief financial officer would review them. My job was to confirm the data to make sure every trading group submitted their losses and profits before he looked at them, to also confirm the loss that was accurate. Back in those days, unfortunately, the profit and losses were submitted in an Excel sheet. At that time, they hired 25 people to revamp the trading books at that investment bank. In the 1980s and 90s, many banks merged together with each other to stay in business, because the savings and loan companies went out of business because interest rates were going down and down and down. So all those companies that merged together, they had different risk reporting systems. Some were so outdated that they didn't work. In other words, a huge percent of the investment bank's profit and losses were not even getting reviewed or being showed on the books. I know this sounds like it's nuts, but that's what happened. That's why my best friend and his best friend were hired to revamp the trading books for risk management. Before we continue the video, please remember, if you like my video and the videos that I create and you want to say thank you, please do thumbs up. It's right down there. Just press it. Thank you so much. So let's get back to my coworker. My coworker was a typical competitive guy who didn't have an MBA, didn't go to an Ivy League school. Not many people did, but some people did. And it has nothing to do if you went to an Ivy League school or not. But somehow, he thought he was good enough and he was too good for everyone, that everyone else was incompetent. Well, if I was incompetent, then why was I replaced because of what he did? He cheated. And he thought that if he would reduce the exposure and replace it with the day before's data, that the head trader at that particular group would give him a job in the future. And unfortunately, that's what happens. So at that time, the head traders would invite you out for drinks on Thursday night, and they would give you the impression that they were going to give you a job where there was a possibility when there would be an opening up. Everybody wanted to work for the trading floor, and only the very lucky kids actually got those jobs. And this is how you get those jobs. You either go to an Ivy League school, make sure you get the top grades, and you get recruited by HR. The other group of people, their daddy, their uncle, or the uncle's uncle, whoever it is, got them the job because of their wealth. Or that you have a wife or a husband that works there. All these things actually happen. So we were very lucky to be working for the chief financial officer and in that particular group. But whether you're at the bottom or you're at the top or the middle office, competition still exists. And it has nothing to do with fighting for your position. Somebody mentioned that to me, and that's a disgrace. The fact is, today, we do not need a dominant person in the group controlling everything that's happening. That's what's wrong with the quality of management in all companies possible. I'm going to walk you through my example what an actual good company is. Hedge funds, because I'm a doctor of hedge fund selection, I understand the ins and outs of that type of company, and I realize how proficient they are at managing the company, whether it's managing risk, managing the assets, recruiting new capital or new employees, etc. So first, they have to outsource a lot of their work. This is because legally, they're not allowed to have an accountant on staff. It has to be an outsourced company that they don't own or they don't have any connections to. 2, they have to have an administrator to reduce fraud. They have to outsource their administration. If all companies use that as a model, they will reduce the competition that lingers in companies and that produces the worst quality of management, because the one that's more dominant in the group is going to win. Unfortunately, they're the bullies. But what about all the people that were overly qualified to do that job, but they didn't get that job? Because maybe they didn't have a domineering personality, or maybe they didn't have, I don't know if they were short or tall, whatever it is. Or maybe the one at HR did that split-second thing, whether they were going to hire that person or not. They don't look at the resume on when you hire someone. It's a split-second image that you have in your head. If you're a woman or a man, and the idea in the head is, would you marry that person or would you trust that person? That's why people hire each other. That's why I got hired at that investment bank. Because my best friend trusted me to be truthful. He knew that I was extremely naive because I was so young that I wouldn't be affected by those head traders. That I would do the proper job that it took to review the data every morning so that the chief financial officer would look at accurate data. But what if my friend left the company and I was still there? Well, I'll tell you what happened. My friend left the company because he sued the company because his new director was, in a way, she had her own agenda, what she was going to do. And because of that, she reduced the quality of management, the product, the quality of that product that they had to do. Again, she put her own emotional well-being before the company. And my friend left the company, sued them, and got a couple $100,000 in late 1990s because of her managing with her emotions. She didn't do what she was supposed to. She thought in her own mind that she was better at doing the job than he was, which isn't true. Because my friend had a PhD in mechanical engineering from Columbia. He was overly qualified to do what he had to do. He proved himself in risk management to revamp the trading books, and now he was hired to do it in credit management. Again, a great employee from a great company lost. And she being the more dominant person, you have to think about how she got in that position. Who did she know? She survived there 10 years after he left, even with 5 lawsuits. 5 different people sued the company because of her, and she was still there. Again, sometimes it's better to outsource than to keep the employee as an employee. Because my friend also had to hire independent contractors to do that job, because hiring the best computer software people, computer programmers, I'm talking about there were 25 people working nonstop to revamp those trading books, so that every single trading desk all around the world would submit their data to the same system. Now, of course, back then there's reasons why it took so long, because technology was doubling every year, and when you spend $2 million for a mainframe computer, it was outdated by the time you signed the check. So that's why investment banks were waiting. But it became apparent at that time in 1999 and the year 2000 that it was no longer possible to wait, because we had a disaster that happened. And you have to say to yourself, another thing that's a problem. So you hire risk management for a company, right? And you have risk managers there. Do they really do the best job possible? I don't think so. Because let's look at this situation. Again, they should have outsourced their traders. They should have hired independent traders to come in and to trade. In other words, the company, instead of having their own trading floor, because they're too cheap, they should have invested in the hedge fund managers, which now they are, because they realize they're incapable of managing their risk. Because it's not normal that you have risk management separate on the trading floor. The trader should know how to manage his risk. And as a PhD in financial management and leadership, an expert on hedge fund selection, that's my duty, to produce the best traders there are, to search them out. So again, the structure of an investment bank or any big company, you could look at these situations and you could say to yourself, well, something could be improved, right? For example, instead of hiring an employee for let's talk about a hedge fund. Instead of hiring an employee to raise capital who has a big Rolodex and an IPO desk or something like that, who has those big investors, how about you, instead of wasting your time with one person, how about you go and outsource that to another company? There's a change that's happening. A company that does outsourcing, let's say secretarial work or phone service. So for my company, I have a phone service that I pay per month based on a certain amount of calls at the minimum, etc. If I were to hire someone, would that person be, how valuable would that person be is the question. Because hiring one person, what if the phone rings twice at the same time? Well, I'm losing a call. That's money lost. Because when people call, they want someone on the phone. They're extremely impatient. So again, instead of hiring people to answer the phone, you're probably better off paying a company to outsource it. You're better off hiring a company to do that. Because the person at the company, because it's such a small company, the owner is there. And because the owner doesn't have to deal with competition or whatever the situation is, they're able to focus on doing their job. And because they're able to focus on doing their job, they produce a better quality. Secondly, the other issue is that when you have a smaller group, it produces a better outcome. So when you have a smaller group that are experts on what they do, the quality of the product is to the extreme. Instead of having the typical organization where you have HR and HR does the hiring because, you have to go through the legal method first, but then you could actually hire your own friend when they can't find someone. I'm not saying it's wrong to hire a friend because that's what happened to me multiple times. But it also happened to be that the job itself wasn't hard. It was the competition that was so stressful.